Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the September 17th business meeting of the Fridley Public School Boards. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'll begin. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for the September 17th meeting?
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion by Proeto, seconded by Thornton, to approve the agenda for September 17th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Next on our agenda is the Spotlight on Recognition, beginning with an opening workshop presentation. Dr. Heil.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Chair Riddle and school board members. I would like to share with you our opening workshop presentation for our staff when they returned back to work on August 26th. So in part of that, we welcomed our new staff and our new staff at Hayes and Stevenson, as well as Fridley Middle School, Fridley High School, and then our lovely ALC and FCC. So it was wonderful to have them in the audience, and they were able to stand and get applause. Next, a very important thing, we had 2 members of our staff who earned recognition for 25 years of service, and that would be Carla Hessian, who's an occupational therapist for the district, and as well as Kirk Myra, a teacher at Fridley High School. Both reached their 25th year here with Fridley, so it was wonderful to honor them in that. Next is our 2019 Teachers of Excellence Award. So that is voted in by the principals and talking with other people. And what's wonderful about this award is that generally the rest of the staff does not know who's going to win the award. So it's very exciting that day. It's only the teacher itself knows, and generally the administration. So for Fridley High School, Mr. Eric Redding-Pitting, who works in special education, won the Teacher of Excellence. Ms. Suzanne Schlittke for Fridley Middle School also works in special education. At Hayes Elementary, in the area of reading specialist, Ms. Mary Kearing, she won it for Teacher of Excellence. Ms. Debbie Ryan, probably several people know, kindergarten at Stevenson, she won Teacher of Excellence this year. And Miss Mackenzie Deisner works at ALC, and she's a social worker, and she won that position this year. We had a special employee of the year. Generally, Fridley chooses one employee of the year, but it was quite the year last year. So we actually honored employees of the year, and that would be our entire Fridley Public School custodial department. They survived what I call the Armageddon of snow and temperature and cold weather and sleeping and watching pipes and taking care of burst pipes, and they had quite the winter. So we wanted to congratulate them for that. We also celebrated the second annual Fridley Spirit Day. We would like to have that every Friday, the first Friday of the month, where they wear the Fridley Tiger in black and gold. So it was great to kick off the week with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we move to business action items, beginning, with the resolution on accepting gifts. Or did you have something more?
Do I have a school resource fair?
Oh, school resource fair. You're right. I blew right by that. I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
You're right.
Thank you.
Superintendent staff reports. I'm terrible. That's my fault.
Okay, thank you.
The school resource fair, Dr.
Thank
Heil.
you. Thank you. I just
What's
want to
more-
share with you the annual Back to School Resource Fair that was held on August 24th. This is a fair that started very small and through great idea from Alota Sims, who works over equity and inclusion specialist. It works over at the middle school, and it has just grown immensely. So we hosted it, and we had over 400 backpacks that were filled with school supplies that were donated from many members of the community, as was available for our Fridley students. In addition, families had a variety of resources available to them as well, and there was information provided by district programs and local community organizations. And generally, we have a long line outside the door well before we start. So it was a great showing. So thank you, Chair Riddle.
Well, thank you, and I apologize to Alota. I do not want to steal any of her thunder. We want to make sure Alota gets the recognition she deserves. That's a great program that she's put together, and it's just growing by leaps and bounds year after year. So thank you to her for all the work she does on that. Now we'll move on to those other gifts, running from one set of gifts to another. We're fortunate that we have a community that gives so readily to the Fridley Public Schools. And in the past month, the following persons have donated to Hayes Elementary in the total of $176, Deanna Roth and Carla Clements. Donating to Stevenson Elementary School, we have the Presbyterian Church of the Way, $80 plus some school supplies. The Perigo Company also did school supplies. Minco gave $1,000 as well as school supplies to the Stevenson. And Jason Lucas had 22 pairs of headphones were donated. Donating to Fridley Middle Schools for a total of $35 was Stephanie Sharp-Keisha. Donating to Fridley High School, again with Stephanie Sharp-Keisha, Allison Hoff, Vanessa Johnson, who provided some professional development books, and Carol Miner donated desktop computer, full machinist tool set, plumbing, and electrical tools. Also at the high school, we have the Dollar General Literacy Foundation gave $1,500 for a culturally responsive classroom library. Do I have a motion to accept these gifts and thank the donors for their contributions?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Adam, seconded by Stark, to accept the gifts and thank the donors for their contribution. Any further discussion? With that, clerk, would you call the roll?
Mr. Adam?
Aye.
Ms. Perito?
Aye.
Mr. Riddle?
Aye.
Ms. Stark?
Aye.
Ms. Thornton?
Aye.
And the resolution passes. Thank you. Next, I would call Mr. Tilling up to discuss the appointing of election judges for the November 5th school district election.
Yes, Board Chair Riddle, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Heil. So on November 5th, the school district's going to be holding their general election. As part of that process, the board needs to approve the election judges that will be present for that election, which is going to take place at the Fridley Community Center on November 5th. We've worked with Anoka County Election Office, who have provided a list of certified election judges. They meet all the requirements of the Minnesota statute and county administrative policy, and have been trained and certified pursuant to law. So we're making a resolution to appoint the election judges that Anoka County has provided to us.
And these were all chosen by Anoka County. The school district had nothing to do with the selection of these individuals?
That's correct.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the appointing of the election judges for the school district general elections to be held November 5th, 2019?
Motion to approve the judges. Second.
I have a motion by Prueto, seconded by Thornton, to approve the resolution appointing election judges for the special district general election to be held on November 5th, 2019. Any further discussion? Not, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Adam?
Aye.
Ms. Perito?
Aye.
Mr. Riddle?
Aye.
Ms. Stark?
Aye.
Ms. Thornton?
Aye.
And the resolution passes. Next up, we have the preliminary pay 2020 levy certification. Mr. Till.
Yes. So we're making a motion tonight for the school board to approve our preliminary 2020 levy certification. And the reason I say preliminary is this kind of starts the process. So when we certify the levy tonight, we notify Anoka County. They in turn create the tax statements that are mailed out to the community. And then between now and December, we will hold, at our December board meeting, we will hold a truth and taxation meeting. That meeting will take place on December 17th at 7 p.m. That'll give the community members time, based on them reviewing their tax statements, if they want to come in and make any public comments about the tax statement itself. We are making a recommendation to certify the maximum. The reason we do that is it enables us to maximize our levy dollars that are pursuant to statute or voter approved versus a dollar amount. Because if we use a dollar amount, what's going to happen between now and December when we certify the final, MDE could be making changes to the levy based on legislative changes and such. So we want to certify the maximum. I will say that our levy is making a slight increase from last year, 1.2%. From our pay 19, so it's kind of setting us up nicely as we roll into that 2020 levy process. So making a motion to approve and certify the maximum preliminary levy.
Right. Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary pay 2020 levy certification at the maximum amount?
Motion moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Adams, seconded by Thornton, to approve the maximum levy amount for preliminary pay 2020 levy certification. Any further discussion? Not? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Thank you. Next up on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda. This is the minutes of the school board and business meeting and work session that were held on August 20th, 2019. Monthly financial reports, new contracts, amendments, leaves of absence, termination, resignations, and retirements. Approval of, or the agreement for the statewide health improvement program agreement that we have with Anoka County, and the assurance of compliance with state and federal law prohibiting discrimination documentation. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda of the items?
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion by Proeto, seconded by Thornton, to approve the consent agenda of the routine items previously mentioned. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. Next up on the agenda item for this evening is the student enrollment. Dr. Heil.
Thank you, Chair Riddle and school board members. Our student enrollment, we're sharing with you our total enrollment of K-12 as of what we call our first Friday, September 6th. For K through 12, we have 2,717 students with ECSE as well as PSEO added. Transition ALC, we arrive at 2,840 students, and with our highly successful four-year-old preschool program, that brings us to about 2,977 students. As most of you know, it fluctuates quite a bit at the beginning of the year, so we will have another total, more confirmed total in October at the next board meeting. Thank you.
But we were right on track to meet the budgeted goals that we had predicted originally.
That is correct.
Right. Thank you. Next up will be the several first readings of policy, beginning with Policy 419, the tobacco-free environment policy. Excuse me. Ms. Seifert-Hurtling.
Good evening, School Board Chair Riddle, board members, and Superintendent Hyam. Tonight, I have the policies 419 for first reading, tobacco-free environment, and there are a couple of changes that we are looking at adding. We would like to add the electronic delivery of tobacco, e-cigarettes, as we know that, into our policy as part of our tobacco-free environment. We'd also like to add that we will not solicit or receive any contributions from any groups or organizations that sell tobacco products. So those are the two things that we are proposing we add to this policy this evening.
Now, the e-cigarettes, that does also include all the vaping products, correct?
That is correct, yes, yes.
Thank you.
The second policy that I have for first reading tonight is Policy 532, the use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds. One of the things that we are going to look at deleting is to prevent severe property damage. That's one of the things that the statute has looked at deleting as something that we want to just kind of take a look at. You know, if there's students that may have be doing severe property damage, it's maybe not something that we need to look at using peace officers for. Another thing that we want to look at is we no longer use prone restraints in schools, and one of the things we want to also work toward eliminating is seclusion rooms. So we'd like to add that to our policy as something that we would like to minimize and work toward the elimination. Now, we do not have any seclusion rooms in Fridley Public Schools at this time. So that is one thing that the state is working toward eliminating and using that language. And then also just adding to the policy the reporting responsibilities that we already do every single year, but we are required to report any uses of restricted procedures for special education students to the state, and we do that already, but just add that to the policy. So those are what I bring to you for first reading this evening.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a couple of financial policies, Policy 713 and Policy 721 regarding student activity accounting and a uniform grant guidance. Mr. Telling.
Yes, Board Chair Riddle, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Heil. So presented to you tonight for first reading, Policy 713, the student activity accounting. We're moving forward with adopting the MSBA model policy, and that's due to the fact that a couple months ago we received guidance from our auditors as well as MDE that our student activities would be rolling under board control. And what that means is their funds just transfer under the board control versus not being under board control. So we want to make sure that we're providing management oversight of these accounts. And then from a financial tracking, we've created an account in our accounting system that will allow us to accurately track the revenue expenses for these student activities. The manner in which these funds are being used from the student standpoint is not changing. They'll still continue to work with their staff advisor on collecting funds, executing the funds for their programs. And then the last change is that as part of the policy, the student activity accounts will then become a part of our annual district audit starting in the 2020 school year. That's the first reading for student guidance, student activity accounting.
Any question with regards to that? If not, Policy 721?
Yeah, Policy 721 is our uniform grant guidance. This is a new policy that we're making a recommendation to adopt. Again, we are using the model policy from MSBA. We in the district, we do have federal grants, so this policy then will clearly outline for us to make sure that we're having compliance as it relates to the uniform grant guidance regulations, further defining policy outline for procurement processes, methods, and following competition. If we receive any equipment under the grant, it allows us to have managing the equipment and safeguarding assets. It'll outlines allowable and non-allowable uses of the federal grant monies. There are times where we have salaries and benefits associated with the grant, so this policy outlines how that works. And then finally, we also have sometimes there's travel associated with the grant, and so this policy outlines the policy as well.
Right.
That's the first reading.
All right, thank you. And as always, these policies should be available on our website, should any of the public have questions regarding them.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Next on our board agenda will be reports from school board members. This month we have the Association of Metropolitan School Districts board meeting that was held September 6, 2019. Dr. Heil.
Thank you. We had two speakers at AMSD meeting on September 6th, and the first one was Paula Forbes, who's an attorney, and she has worked quite a bit with Reimagine Minnesota. So she shared an overview on the upcoming student conference on October 21st, and she also gave a brief update on the mediation of the state Cruz Guzman lawsuit. I wanted to make sure I put state in there. So one of the things that Paula Forbes will be working on is the judge that is sitting on his case is very much interested in student input and how they feel schools overall can be more inclusive. So they will be sending out to Metro schools questions that selected students can answer, and then they will have over 2,000 students come out to a student conference on October 21st at the convention center and be able to give their input. And what's so beautiful about that, they will actually take that input and actually give the judge from this case is interested in what the students have to say in helping to resolve or mediate what is going on between the parents and the state of Minnesota in regards to that. As well as we had a guest speaker from Dr. Bill Morris, who owns the Morris Leatherman Company, and he is well known in his state, and he shares information and does surveys about the state of Minnesota. So I will give a little bit of it because we have a board member that's actually going to another meeting where he'll be presenting on Friday. So his company did a random sample of about 1,000 residents across the metro area, and it was all about what are their thoughts about the state of Minnesota. What came out of it was 51% felt that the state was headed in the right direction. well, 45% said the state was headed in the wrong direction. And this is actually a gap. The gap is closing between the two. The concern of why in increase and going in the wrong direction, several of the people surveyed said they had quite a concern around the State Department of Human Services of what's going on, why are staff leaving and not really getting a clear idea of what's going on there. Also, part of the survey question was what is the most important issue to you as a Minnesotan, and ranked up again was the area of education, about the quality of education as well as the funding of education. And this group did say that they would support the mandatory inflation increase in educational funding. So that was very interesting to hear, as well as the survey results shared as our community survey results shared in the spring, that the people who took the survey will be willing to pay for additional mental health services for students in schools. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have important future school board dates. The Northwest Suburban Integration School District Joint Powers Board meeting will be held tomorrow evening, September 18th at 6:15 at their district offices. The next school is in Equity in Education, September 20th, 2019 at 9 a.m. at the DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel in Roseville. Northeast Metro 916 board meeting will be held October 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Bel Air School. We'll be hosting at the Fridley Community Center a community referendum informational meeting. That'll be October 3rd at 6:30 p.m. And everyone, all the residents in the district should be receiving a mailing inviting them to this community informational meeting later this week. So look for that in your U.S. mail box for that. The next AMSD board meeting will be held October 4th at 7 a.m. at the Cora Education Center. And our next Fridley Public School Board meeting, October 15th, work session 5:30 p.m., open forum at 7, the business meeting at 7:30 here at the Fridley Community Center. I believe there's also a Get Your Paws Moving tomorrow, if I remember, at 4:30, I believe, starting at the football field at the high school. That certainly, if you're interested in coming out and getting your paws moving, walking around, it's a good time. So I want to plug that one also for it. That's being run by the Fridley Schools Foundation. With that, unless anybody else has anything else for the meeting, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
With a motion tentatively to motion by Thornton, seconded by Stark to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 7:52. Thank you.